Okey-doke. Thank you all so much for joining us today for another ADAPT presentation. My name is Brooke. I'm a program coordinator at Alzheimer's Services. And we have two more presentations scheduled for this year, one coming up in October and then one in November. I'll send the October sign up in our follow-up email from this presentation. For some housekeeping, today's presentation will be recorded and your calls will remain muted throughout the call. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat box and we'll read them out at the end of the presentation. Another thing, if you are here and needing your participation recorded for a CEU, go ahead and make sure that your first and last name are displayed as your Zoom display name. That way we can properly record for presentation participation. And I will also send in the follow-up email any links or anything that are given during today's presentation, but also a link for an evaluation that will need to be completed for your CEU certificate as well. If anybody has any tech issues or any questions regarding the Zoom, anything like that, go ahead and put it in the chat box. I will be monitoring that throughout the presentation. And then now I will introduce our two presenters for today. First is Katrail Davis. She is a fifth-year doctoral candidate at LSU, earning her PhD in clinical psychology with a specialty in neuropsychology. During her time at LSU, she has worked with licensed neuropsychologists in psychiatric, rehabilitative, and neurology clinics, providing care to those with neurodegenerative conditions and acquired brain injuries. Her dissertation is focused on examining the feasibility and utility of a cost-free clinic that provides neuropsychological evaluations and community members to community members in need, which is so fantastic. And we have flyers for that clinic as well that we can send out in our follow-up email. Next, our presenter is Alex Badillo Cabrera, I believe is how it's pronounced. I so appreciate you being so kind with my pronunciation there. He is a doctoral student at LSU. He is broadly interested in the risk factors for cognitive decline in older ethno-racially diverse groups. He intends to explore how psychosocial factors such as socioeconomic status, education, and specific cultural characteristics may play in a mediating role in the risk of developing dementia. So both of our presenters here are doing the good work, and we so appreciate you for spending some time with us today to talk about this topic that anybody who is in the sphere of caring for someone or loving someone with dementia, we talk about redirection. We use redirection whether or not we know we're using it. So glad y'all can join us today to shed some light and share y'all's specialty and talents with us.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Brooke. I know that Alex and I are super excited to be here today and just talk about redirection techniques. What are they and how do I use them? And even more broadly, just different behavioral changes that may occur with someone who has dementia. We can go to the next slide. Brooke gave us a great introduction. Alex and I are both a part of the Neuropsychometrics research group coming out of LSU, and you can see, our lab photo there, and then some different events that we've done as well. And so we do a lot of health fairs and things of that nature. And thanks for putting that flyer out at the end. We appreciate it. So as we get started today, I did just want to point out some of the resources that we used to put this presentation together and that we found very helpful. And that is these three books here, which I highly recommend grabbing even just one of them. If we pulled any information that wasn't from these books, we will make sure to kind of notate where we got that from. But largely, I think we found these books to be extremely helpful when kind of putting together this presentation. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to Alex to kind of begin our presentation on important terms to know.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Since we have a wide variety of audience today, so we wanted to make some emphasis on some of the terms that we're gonna use today. For example, redirection technique are non-pharmacologic approaches to managing and preventing unsafe or unhelpful behaviors and symptoms, especially with patients with dementia. Dementia or major cognitive disorder is marked declines in cognitive functioning, for example, affect memory, language, executive functions, and that significantly limits an individual's capacity to perform instrumental activities of daily life, such as handling finances, or managing medication, as well as, anything that required for the day, eat, bathe, as well as important appointment, etc. And caregivers, support person, or informant is the person responsible and or those who help provide resources and care. Why would I need to use these redirection techniques? Because 80% of the people with dementia or patients with dementia experience these symptoms, and caregiver often need an approach that is not necessarily medication. An example for this is, for example, frontotemporal dementia or Lewy body dementia uh, often have these kind of behavior disturbances, and is essential for us to know this kind of behavior disturbances and also how to redact them. Some of the behavior disturbances that happens can distress for both of the patient and also the caregivers. Okay, so how we generally approach to behavior challenges, I think is very important to understand what happened before and after to better assess like the challenge. If we are able to, pinpoint on what was the reason for this behavior to happen, we can definitely keep track to that and better understand the patient and how to manage it and how to use redirection techniques. For example, as well, we can see how they react to that behavior, as well, what consequences do we have from that behavior. As well, some of the tips that we can use in the moment to help for these behavior challenges is to have a gentle tone, to stay calm, as well as redirect them to activity that keep them out of mind of what is happening. Something that is very important that we need to consider as well is improve the communication. Use a very low tone, your pose, and don't have to be like challenging or anything that can escalate the situation. As well, just remain calm and do not mention anything that can trigger the patient.
Absolutely. We're going to go a little bit deeper into, the overview of those things, and we're going to start with examining the antecedents, the behavior, and the consequences of that behavior. So anyone out here who does a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy is going to find this to be a very familiar sort of way of viewing and analyzing behaviors. The first thing that we really want to do is examine what was happening before the behavior or the response occurred. That may give us indicators to help prepare or predict what might be upcoming. Some specific things to look out for: is there a certain time of the day that tends to be more correlated with maybe irritability or being upset? We're going to talk more specifically about sundowning, but this might be something to look out for. Is there something upcoming that's upsetting or could be distressing, like a doctor's appointment? Are there people around? And then the last one is really, is someone sick? And sometimes when somebody has a major neurocognitive diagnosis or has dementia, we often want to attribute different changes all to that diagnosis, when oftentimes things like a urinary tract infection can cause things like delirium that can seem like a big behavioral difference. So we do want to keep in mind that, keeping your medical care team involved in the behavior sort of monitoring process can be really helpful to look out for bacterial infections and things of that nature. Okay. Another thing to look out for is just what is the behavior or the response? What does it look like? Is it irritability? Is it something that they're doing or not doing? So is there a time where you really see a disengagement from the family conversation or the activity that's going on? Or is their behavior, does it tend to be physical? Is there a safety concern when people become upset or disoriented that you need to look out for? Ways that we can monitor this behavior is really through frequency and duration. So we can really look at what are the most common behaviors and what do they look like. So does someone become irritable when transitioning between activities, and does it not last for very long? So perhaps it's something that you can predict, but you don't necessarily need to prevent. Whereas somebody becoming physical or very distressed for a long period of time, we might start looking towards more prevention techniques rather than just trying to, kind of get through it. Okay. And then we also want to look at the consequences. What is the person with the cognitive changes getting or not getting from the behavior? Is it being reinforced? For example, are you not doing the thing that they don't want to do, and then it becomes sort of a habit? Are there any environmental changes that can help or that happen as a result of the behavior that help manage the behavioral response as well? Basically, we want to look at what was achieved or not achieved as a result of the behavior and the response to really create a behavior log to find patterns. Do they engage in behaviors when they are hungry and they have a hard time communicating? This is a really big thing with major neurocognitive disorders, is that communication process becomes much more difficult to engage in the way that we would normally expect somebody to communicate. And so they may use behaviors to actually as a form of communication. So you become very, very irritable when you're hungry. I mean, I know I've been hangry before, so I know that can happen. So that's something that can be monitored. Do they just need help with a task of daily living and are having a hard time saying it? Okay. To kind of put this all together, I want to give an example here. So we have and I encourage everybody on your side, I know that everybody's muted, to really think through what the answer is of what is the antecedent response and consequence on your own, but no, not necessary to put in the chat or anything like that. So we have an 80-year-old woman who is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and the family is noting behavioral disturbances. Specifically, she becomes really upset when a particular television commercial comes on and feels as though the actors in the commercial are trying to sell her this product over and over again, and she's really not interested in it. She becomes really adamant about telling the people in the commercial to stop contacting her, even going so far as to trying to contact the cable company to tell them to stop sending these people to her to sell her products. This is becoming a bit of an issue with the family because she becomes very irritable and almost persistent about the commercial, and it's causing disruptions in family time, and it's causing her a lot of emotional distress. One of the things that we can do as, support people or just caregivers of people experiencing cognitive change is just really evaluating what's going on here, just taking a step back. So we know in terms of antecedents, having that TV commercial come on is almost that direct trigger that we can put a lot of weight on, that we know when this happens, the response is going to be the irritability and the anger towards the commercial. And then we have the consequence that it's disrupting this time together, and it's not helpful, and it's not what we want, and everybody's upset. In the situation with this person, their family member was really wanting to argue about the commercial being a commercial rather than real people coming to her house and trying to sell her specifically this product. And so really just being able to say, we know when this commercial comes on that this is what's going to happen. So what are the things that we can do, knowing sort of the ABCs or the ARC of what's happening to prevent that? And so some of the solutions that we came up with was turning the TV off when that specific commercial came on, or turning the channel, and then just being really particular about not engaging in that argumentation about it and just doing something different or watching a different channel together. And really being able to recognize what's happening before, what it's triggering, and what's happening afterwards. You're able to pinpoint the point of intervention. And so in this scenario, it really was the antecedent was the point of intervention, and knowing how to prevent that behavior from happening.
Okay. So real quick here, we have just a 1 minute video of like interaction between a physician and a patient with dementia who having one of these behavior challenges and how he can handle it.
What's going on? Tell me what's happening, how I can help you.
I don't know who you are. The police took my wallet, all my ID. I need to get the hell out of here. I'm really scared. I don't need to be here, okay?
Sounds like you're going through a really tough time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I am.
When you go through a tough time like this, what helps you to relax?
Being at home. I'm not at home right now, am
Oh,
I?
that can't really happen quite yet.
That's right.
But maybe if we talk a little bit about what's happening, we can make things better.
No, I want to talk to my brother. Where's the phone? Because I need to call the,
have you
I'm
talk
gonna
on the
need to
phone
call
in
the
a second.
police. I'm gonna call 911 and get the hell out of here.
When somebody's going through an agitation episode, they're not a bad person, even though it may come across that way to some people, like they're hostile or sarcastic or saying mean things to somebody. But what's really happening is that somebody is having a very, very difficult psychiatric crisis, and they really do want help. They're just really not expressing it in such a way that the average person would go, oh, this is somebody who needs our help. The best way to work with somebody who is agitated is not to be agitated back to them. And it's often easy to forget that in the heat of the moment. If somebody's saying, I don't understand why I'm here, you don't say back to them, just sit down, don't worry about it, we'll let you know, because that's just going to make them more frightened and can lead to more agitation. One of the most important things not to say is sit down and shut up. And it's so frequently something that people are going to say some version of that.
I'm gonna call 911 and get the hell out of here.
We can talk about getting you out.
This is your doctor.
We can get
So
you
I
out of
know.
here.
Yeah,
It's a
Ready.
safe place though, but it's going to take a few minutes. We need to talk about why you're here.
I don't know what this place is.
This is a safe place. It's a psychiatric facility. And
Why am
we
I in a
see people in
psychiatric
all
hospital?
kinds of different distress or not feeling that well. And I understand you don't think that's going on with you.
I'm seeing all these people here and they're scaring me. And there's a guy over there. Look at all the staff. They're talking to that guy. What are they going to do to him?
A good de-escalation involves empathetic listening, intervening in a calm way to make sure people feel that this is a safe environment, that we're here to help and not to hurt. You aren't crowding them, you're not glaring at them, but you're looking like you're receptive.
Yes, excellent. So as we saw in the video, the doctor basically did a wonderful job just to be calm, just to reassure the patient, as well to not engage any kind of discussion, as well to not try to mention like the reason like what he's having this behavior challenge. As we talk about reassure, one of the 4 R's and the one that we're gonna go in details are reassure, redirect, reconsider, and relax. For reassure, as we know, memory loss can be scary, overwhelming. The familiar becomes unfamiliar. We have to make sure to reassure a loved one or patient with dementia that they are okay and safe, and maybe paramount in helping cope with behavior changes. So it's important to always reassure them, to not let them just get confused, get anxious, etc., and be there for them. The next R is redirect. Saying stop, or how the doctor mentioned, just shut up and sit there, is most likely not going to be helpful in managing disruptive or unhelpful behavior. Especially do not argue, part of dementia is that your ability to reason and communicate decreases. So basically, we cannot expect from them to see the things or understand the things same as ours. As well, we can find a new activity to that they enjoy, or find a calming is often a great solution for everyone. For example, if they are having this behavior challenge and they love a movie or a program, you say, oh, instead of doing this, why don't we sit and watch this movie that we love, etc. So always like to redirect them to something else to not make things worse. And also like make yourself the one in need. Sometimes people with dementia, it's easier to redirect them to asking them questions about something they can help you with you. For example, if the patient was a housekeeper, we can ask her, oh, can you please help me folding the laundry? Right now I'm having some trouble doing this. Or can you tell me, for example, what kind of ingredient go best with this? So those kind of like techniques that help you redirect the patient and do not engage them in the situation or behavior challenge that is happening. The next R is reconsider. Is considering how the patient with dementia may be thinking about a situation or task may help find a solution to ongoing difficulties. For example, not only try to understand why they're doing this or why they're thinking this way, but also like putting them in their shoes. We previously discussed they lost the working memory, they lost the language, they lost the communication skills. So it's easy to understand where they're coming from if easier to deal with the behavior challenges if we know how they think and if we know like this is not something they can do by themselves. As well, they may not recall receiving help on a task that some may find embarrassing, like bathing or feeding, and that's contribute to the ability of fear. In this case, for example, try to not reminder that they cannot do stuff, or also like letting them know they cannot do it. Just try to word it in a way that they feel like they are helping or they feel like it's something common to do. That way you avoid getting them irritable or avoid them, feeling fear, etc. So the last R is relax. So as we know, caregiving or supporting one with dementia is hard and emotional taxing. So it's important to make a bit of effort, understand that every situation is different and it's not like a place to say things like that, but we need to have a calming presence, have a calming tone, and a body language that can help alleviate the tension and do not make it more difficult in managing these behaviors. And also important to see the person for how they are right now with full context of the dementia at the stages they are in. As we mentioned before, we know that some of the ability for them to communicate are different. So it's important that we do not take anything personal. If they say an insult, if they call you names, stuff like that, don't just, ignore it and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And now pass with Katrail, yes.
Yeah, I can talk here. I really like that last slide of just acknowledging how difficult it can be to support a person who's going through changes, but also how difficult it is to be that person going through changes as well. And as long as we can stay as relaxed as possible, that is definitely helpful. I have another vignette here. So in this one, we have a 78-year-old man and former mechanic who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 3 years ago. Recently, he's begun experiencing rapid forgetting. And what I mean by this is that time period between being told information and forgetting it is becoming shorter. And that has been associated with extreme fear. So a lot of crying and yelling, and then also some discomfort about leaving the house. And so this has led to a lot of prolonged couch sitting, as his caregivers, they don't want to trigger an episode of crying and distress, but they're also kind of concerned about his inactivity. And so how might the 4 R's help here? First off, I think reassurance is so important in this one, where someone is very scared, and just letting them know, you're safe, you're home, like you live here, but also just redirecting perhaps when some of that fear, and you can redirect with familiarity. Oftentimes, very common things that we do, like our profession. So in this case, being a mechanic, that might stick around a little bit longer when someone's experiencing memory changes. And so one thing that we could do is utilize that to our advantage. So in the case with a mechanic, if you don't want them sitting around a lot, but also it's causing a lot of fear to leave, perhaps the bridge to that is something that's familiar, like working on a car. And so you can imagine saying, hey, I really need help picking out a tool. Which one should I use? Could you come and help me? And at least now they're in the driveway, maybe chit-chatting with you rather than sitting on the couch. We can also reconsider, does this person need to go on every single trip outside of the house? And there's a bit of a balance to find here of, you don't want a lot of inactivity, but how much do we want to force somebody to be distressed all the time? So we know that things like doctor visits and getting out of the house is important and key, but perhaps it's twice a week rather than every single day or multiple times a day. And then lastly, just really relaxing and just understanding that it's difficult to help someone who is very distressed and scared, but just knowing that not engaging in that and becoming angry is going to be so important to keeping things as calm as possible when the distress does occur. So a lot of the time, it's a bit of a balancing act of, the safety and quality of life for the person, as well as, what sort of behaviors are going to come from that. The last thing that we kind of had in our general tips that I want to talk about is really improving communication, as this is one of those things we've been talking this entire presentation of, we don't want to engage, we don't want to engage. The natural question is, well, what do I do then, right? First off, we want to take our time in the things that we need to do and complete with a person who's experiencing memory loss or any sort of cognitive change. And this can look like really planning ahead. If you know that leaving the house tends to be a bit more time consuming, planning to start getting ready 30 minutes early rather than 10 or 15 can be very helpful for adjusting and planning for somebody becoming irritable or upset. Really focusing on one task at a time is also important. We all think that we're great multitaskers, and we're really not. And that's especially true for someone who's experiencing cognitive changes. And it can be overwhelming to be told, hey, go get dressed, when you're not exactly sure what steps comprise getting dressed. And so one task at a time might look like, can you put this sock on? Can you put this sock on? Can you put your pants on? More one thing at a time to get through it, which is where that extra time becomes very helpful. Being very encouraging as well is going to keep everybody relaxed, which goes back to the 4 R's. And then I wanted to go over briefly the idea of the POLITE acronym for how we can approach communication with others, which is remaining patient, organized and observational, which can go back to that extra time, as well as our ABCs of, is this antecedent about to, trigger a behavior? Should I be prepared for that? Just remaining observational. And then laughter and joy, right? It helps with everybody staying relaxed. It helps with finding, good quality time with your loved one, even in the full context of the memory loss. And it can bring a lot of joy to caregiving as well. And then ignore what you can. When we're talking about redirecting and trying to prevent, some of these behavioral disturbances or cope with them, part of that might just be not engaging at all. So if we go back to the commercial example and they're kind of going on and on about the commercial, just kind of sidestepping that and being like, oh, look, this show's back on, and just completely just disengaging from it can be one technique that takes practice, because it does feel the opposite of polite at the time, but it's actually can be very kind not to sit on a conversation that's really distressing. And then, of course, like we've been talking about, your body language, your tone, and your eye contact are going to be extremely important in improving communication with others in general, but specifically for people who are experiencing cognitive change.
Okay. So one specific challenge is wandering. Wandering can place individual at risk of injuries, exposures, as well of getting lost. And something that we want to make emphasis is that physical safety is the most important goal when dealing with wandering. As we know, is when a patient wanders, that walks around, wants to leave, constantly moving, it's important to put in place systems or routines to help make a safe place for the patient. For example, we can always make sure to close the door. We can always make sure to not leave like big objects in the way. We can always make sure that we keep an eye on the patient and stuff like that. So to make the a place more safe for the patient. As well, yeah, it's very common. 6 in 10 patients with dementia wander. So it's something that we can expect and something that we can definitely use redirection technique for this. What are some wandering behaviors? I already mentioned some of them. For example, they walk, they pace around the house, they want to leave safe spaces, or they already leave safe spaces, and definitely they become lost. They don't know where they are, they don't know if that's their house, stuff like that. So that can trigger wandering. Some signs that someone may wander. As disease progresses, wandering may become more common. For example, they don't remember where they are. They don't remember that this has been their house for 30 years. They remember people from the past and try to look for them. So these kind of like signs, what might make the person wander. So onset of neuropsychotic symptoms as mood changes, feeling nervous, anxious are some of the things that can come from wonder or vice versa. For example, someone like get some mood changes, so they might just go to wandering, or then someone feel nervous, feel anxious, and they just start wandering around the house, they start wandering to leave. So those are the things that you can keep an eye on to better understand and to better deal with, to manage these behavior challenges. Managing dementia-related wandering. Using the tools we previously discussed, we can effectively address wandering in patients with dementia. If we look again at the POLITE acronym, we need to be patient, we need to be organized, observational. We can make it like, laugher and have a friendly face. We definitely have to ignore what you can. Do not mention to them like, oh, I know you want to leave. Do not mention that, oh, I know that you don't think this is your house. Try to avoid mentioning those things. Ignore what they say. Just try to redirect them. As well as we mentioned multiple times, tones, eye contact, keep calm, just communicate in a way that is soft, calm, and do not try to escalate for an argument and stuff like that. If we implement the 4 R's, it's important to reassure that they are in their house, reassure they're safe, reassure that this is where they belong. As well, try to redirect them. We talk about multiple examples of redirection. We can, ask them if we want to watch a movie, ask them a question completely unrelated to what is the behavior challenge that we are expecting. As well, the other R, relax, just be relaxed about the situation. And also reconsider, as we mentioned, like patients with dementia no longer have the capability of reason, understand where they are. They don't remember people, they don't remember places. So understanding where they're coming from, understanding why they're wandering is also like very important for the reason. And as well, the ABCs, what was the antecedent, what is the behavior, and what is the consequences. So basically always keep an eye or a log of all the wandering that the people have done to better understand it and to prevent the wandering from happening. So this is just a quick video of how the daughter is managing behavior challenges, specifically wandering with the dad.
Wandering can occur as dementia progresses. It can be triggered by someone reliving an old memory, not recognizing where they are, or by a feeling of distress. People with dementia have less ability to communicate or explain where they're going or why they want to go somewhere. Wandering can be triggered by seeing things that signal leaving, such as the front door, purses, keys, or coats. If someone is wandering, approach them in a calm and reassuring manner. Ask them where they're going or what they need, and then distract them with a new activity.
Dad, where are you going?
I want to go home.
You are home.
No, I want to go home. The kids need me.
This is your home. See, here's a family picture. There's me and there's Tom.
But where are the kids?
I'm right here, Dad. I'm your daughter, Jane. And Tom, your son, he just lives 5 minutes away. Let's all give him a call on the phone and say hello.
That sounds nice, honey.
Okay, come on.
Perfect. So as we saw, I love how the daughter just reassured the patient that that was his house, reassured that this was his family, and this is where he belonged. As well, she used like a very low tone. She always communicate calm. As well, I love that she redirected the situation by calling the other son and making sure to know that, and making sure that the son says that that's where where he belongs.
Awesome. I really enjoy that video as well. I think it was like such a smooth, like, let's go call your son rather than, she doesn't keep bringing up leaving, just like quickly transition. So I really like that. For the rest of the presentation, we are going to talk about specific challenges like wandering, and how we can use certain tools and tips to kind of help cope with it. So this one is going to be apathy. Apathy is really a lack of interest in engaging in activities or people around you. And this can be a very common neuropsychiatric symptom and major neurocognitive disorder. The best piece of advice for people experiencing apathy is to use a routine. And this builds an expectation of getting in and out of bed and that you're doing things throughout the day. And it becomes more habit than coming out of want or necessity. Also building in like visiting community centers either daily or even weekly if that fits better with your schedule, doing things that people enjoy like arts and craft time, and just having that slot. So if every single day from 2 to 2:30 we color, that can be a great way to spend quality time with the loved one, as well as getting them engaged in things as well, particularly like the mechanic example. A lot of people find themselves couch sitting with cognitive change. It just feels safer. And so doing something familiar and fun can be a way to get people engaged as well, like working on a car, for example. Okay. Another common challenge, and really here I'll be talking about irritability as well as aggression, which can occur as a behavioral disturbance. First and foremost, safety is always going to be the first thing we look at. This is going to include things like locking doors and keeping potentially dangerous items out of reach. That might be putting knives up or whatever needs to be done to keep everybody safe. And then if you use like a behavior log, you might know that a change of scenery is really helpful for decreasing aggression. So perhaps that is the next step to staying safe. Other things that can help is you might become irritable or aggressive when you're overwhelmed. So breaking those tasks down one at a time is a good tool to put here. You want to keep your care team involved. As we talked about before, delirium is very common for people experiencing UTIs, especially as we age, and that can contribute to worsened severity of cognitive difficulties and sort of this aggression as well. We also want to prepare for triggers that might be bathing, doctor visits, or very predictable changes like sundowning, which I believe is what we're going to talk about next. So sundowning is a phenomenon of worsening of behavior and thinking towards the end of the day. And so people tend, they might be a lot better in the morning, and then maybe mid-afternoon, you notice this strange drop off of just a lot more forgetting, a lot more irritability and mood changes as the day progresses. That tends to happen. So a behavioral log is really the first step. Like, is this happening, or is this just a bad day? Using that log over time is going to be extremely helpful. And so you can prepare ahead of time. That is one thing with sundowning. It's consistent. You can know that towards the end of the day, things are going to increase in severity. And so that might look like doing all of your doctor's appointments between 8 and 10 a.m. So that way it's when the person's at their best and best mood, and is feeling at their best as well. And that can really help predict, you can work around the sundowning. Another thing that may occur in specific types of dementia are dietary changes. One thing that we tend to see is a lot of overeating or an inability to stop eating, as well as an increased or kind of uncommon for them, sweet tooth. I think everybody has varying degrees of love for sweet food, and this is what I'm talking about, is a pretty radical change for that person relative to them, of which they could, eat an entire thing of cookies in one sitting in less than like 3 minutes. So it's a pretty stark change here. And so one way that you can cope with this is locking up certain foods. So if the person has a really hard time inhibiting or stopping their behavior, just removing that from the situation can be helpful. But on the flip side, keeping other food freely available is super important. So having fruits and veggies that people can snack on all day long is going to help keep this as healthy as possible, given the symptomology presentation or symptom presentation. And then jealousy and paranoia can also occur, particularly maybe earlier in forgetting. If you can't find your keys anywhere and you've put them in the same place for the past 5 years and suddenly they're gone, and the only other person who was home that day was your partner, sometimes our brain can fill in those blanks and say, my partner's stealing from me, or they're hiding things from me, or they're conspiring against me for some reason because I knew my keys were right here. That can occur. The key here is to really try to avoid disproving or arguing with the belief. And this one can be particularly difficult because when you're being accused of doing something that you didn't do, I think our first nature is to want to defend ourselves. And so the 4 R's, particularly relaxing for yourself, can be really important here, to not take it personally, and just be reassuring. Everything's going to be okay. We'll find the keys. Do you want to go listen to your favorite album, or let's go for a walk and maybe the keys will be back when we get back? Just really trying to redirect from that and ignore what you can in terms of the improving communication with the POLITE acronym. Just some general tips that we found across the books that we both liked but didn't fit into one particular section is just remembering that familiarity can be comforting. Reminiscing can be really a great way to keep a good mood. Pulling out old books of weddings and photo albums and going through that together can be really great, as well as listening to music that perhaps your loved one or the person you're supporting really enjoys can be a great way to increase mood and comfort the person experiencing some of these behavioral changes. Also, using things like aromatherapy can be calming and soothing. Comfort animals like stuffed animals or dolls, or even having pets, can be really nice. I do want to say here that self-care, or that relax, is a part of caregiving. And we do encourage using external resources if they're available and accessible, and we'll give a break to the caregiver to help. Lastly, of course, medications may be helpful for some people with some sorts of neurocognitive disorders. We are not medical doctors, so I'm not going to be advising any specific medications or anything, but this does tie into why keeping your care team involved is extremely important, because they may be able to recommend some medications that can help prevent and cope with behavioral disturbances. So in summary, behavioral and psychological symptoms are extremely common in major neurocognitive disorders. The first step is naturally to note and track the behaviors so that you can know how to prevent and predict what may occur. Maintaining regular medical care is important. Do not engage, monitor your reactions, but also give yourself grace. We recognize that this can be a difficult process for families and loved ones. Kind of going back to the idea of ambiguous loss, and you're losing parts of the person, even though they're in front of you, and that can be very emotionally taxing for everybody involved. And so just finding the joy, those moments of reminiscing together and just creating experiences that are positive is going to really help coping with some of the behavioral changes that can occur. Okay. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. We want to open up the last 15 minutes for specific questions that people may have.
Thank y'all so much. That was such a great, very in-depth look at what redirection is, how we can practically use it, and then some really good exploration into very common challenges that we see a lot of times that folks face with this. So thank y'all so much. I so appreciate it. And I also loved that y'all shared those few books at the beginning. I took a picture of them, so I'll include those books within our follow-up email as
I loved them. I mean, we just looked at the chapters on behavioral changes. They were just stockpiled full of great information for the whole process. So I definitely would recommend them.
Yes, fantastic. Love that. So the chat is open. So anybody that has any questions or comments, suggestions, things like that, compliments, go ahead, put them in the chat. And I have a few questions and tidbits that I can share too before we have anybody else to engage in the chat. But if I did want to point out for, in talking about books and different literature that can support with redirection and education for managing challenging behaviors with dementia, we have a really great resource library here at Alzheimer's Services that we keep stocked with a bunch of good info on everything, not just like general disease information, but also redirection techniques, different therapies that are very helpful with redirection. And then also our helpline here at Alzheimer's Services, myself, Ellen, who's our social worker here, and then Sherelle, we're always happy to answer any questions and give ideas for redirection. Ellen is PAC certified, so Positive Approach to Care from Teepa Snow. She has tons of great redirection techniques, validation therapy, you name it. There's a lot of different options when it comes to redirection and how to practically apply those to everyday care. So a question that I have, and then it's completely okay if y'all don't have a lot of input onto this, but who would y'all say are like the experts of redirection? Or, as we have heard this presentation, we've gotten a good idea of what redirection is. Who would you say are the go-to people for learning more about redirection? And if it's okay if you don't know, because I have some really great some insight on that too.
Like in the field. I know that Susan McCurry wrote 2 of the books that we drew from, so her name comes up very often when looking these up. But to be honest, that is the first name. Really, when you're like, who are the experts? I'm like, the loved ones. That's initially what came to mind, is like the people who are with their loved ones all the time, probably. But no, and in terms of more of like a scholarly sense, McCurry comes across my face quite a few times when I was researching some of these techniques. I don't know, Alex, if you had anybody else off the top of your dome. No. Okay.
No. To be honest, also, I also believe the people who are just medical care, who's day by day with this patient, as well as basically expert dealing with them in senior centers, clinics, etc. So they are an excellent resource for this.
Yes, yes. Katrell, I love how you said, and Alex, how you kind of parroted the loved ones who are the care partners for the person with dementia. They are the experts. We say that a lot whenever people call our helpline or talk to us about different challenges for people living with dementia. And they are the experts in loved ones, in their loved ones. They are the experts in, what is best for them because they know that person the best. So I think that makes a great point as the people that know that person. It may seem like a crazy idea to throw out, this crazy idea to redirect their loved one, but that person knows them best. So along with that idea, for anybody who has a loved one that has dementia that lives within a community setting or attends any type of a community day center like Charlie's Place or like live in an assisted living or something like that that has an activity director. I'm a little biased because in a past life I have been an activity director at an assisted living memory care. But you are hard pressed to find somebody who is better at redirection than an activity director. That is quite literally their job, is to plan fun things that can fill a person's calendar, create a sense of purpose, create that environment that the person will want to engage in so that it does distract from the more negative components of the dementia journey. So if anybody that's on this call, is thinking about, oh, okay, I have challenges with a bunch of those things with my loved one, I really would like to lean into how can I do redirection better day to day. If your loved one lives within a assisted living that has a activity director, I very well believe that person probably has a lot of great ideas for sure. Okay. Again, chat is open if y'all wanted to, anybody ask any questions or hacks. So y'all briefly mentioned on one of the, right before the summary, y'all had a page on redirection hacks or like things to go to for easy redirection. So I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit more because I know that, there's a few things that are very common within care for someone with dementia that is an easy, like, spark a new, put another, uh, it's a easy redirection segue for using these things. So my ideas for those are food. If someone is having a challenging behavior and it's close to lunchtime, you could say, "Ooh, I smell something good in the cafeteria," or "I smell something good from the kitchen. Let's go check that out. Let's go find that." Another thing, like y'all had mentioned, is pets, or not just pets, but even just outside nature, animals, birds in the bird bath, squirrels from the tree. And then also changing environment or changing rooms, moving from the kitchen to the living room or the living room to a bedroom or moving outside, having that physical change of a environment like closes off a piece of your brain and it starts a new chapter. So that also environmentally can help with redirection. But curious if y'all have any more insight on that.
On all of it, I think they're all great. I mean, my personal favorite redirection approach is making the person with cognitive changes feel helpful. I think that this is just something that perhaps we don't think about all the time. It's just how much autonomy and sense of like worth may diminish as you become like you feel less useful, like people start babying you and treating you a lot differently, and you may not like fully understand why that's happening. So I just really love the idea of playing on the strengths of the person in front of you and like redirecting that way. Like everybody likes to help out somebody they care about. So asking your mom to help you with that recipe that she's been doing for, 4 decades every Christmas. Like, I just think that's such a wonderful way to create good times together while also redirecting away from the fear or the anxiety that was happening before, and you get to change scenery. Let's go into the kitchen and like go do this thing. And so I really find that to be such a way to honor the person that you care about. And just I don't know, it's just a joyful way for me personally.
Yes, love that. That's a great point. And yes, great point. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a comment. There's a Teepa Snow tip to help with redirection about talking about something in the room or around you. This creates it boosts activities and can help care partners to think of things around the room. So kind of like, looking for pictures around the room or magazines, colorful art designs on the wall or something like that can be a easy, I spy, this thing that's on the wall that is a quick and easy redirection. That's a great idea. Thank you for that.
I like that.
Okay, great. So we have a few more minutes of our presentation here. Anybody, also, oh, here we go. Here's a few more. Our family has always had pets. Now we have a robotic cat. Dogs are available too. I was amazed how many people with dementia appreciate interaction with the animal. Yeah, that's a great idea, Donna. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Christian says that Adria Thompson with Be Light Care is a really great resource. I agree. I am one of Adria Thompson. I can share her in our follow-up email as well. But I'm one of Adria Thompson's biggest fangirls. She, especially if you're a social media person, she posts tons of great redirection techniques on that. Okay, good deal. Fantastic. Thank y'all so much. So I wanted to reserve this last few minutes to hear a little bit more about y'all's clinic, Catrail. If you wanted to just give a little shout
Yeah.
out to that, I'm happy to reserve a little bit of time for that too.
Absolutely. I did want to know, I see a comment here from Charles who is saying that something that's difficult to deal with is that their wife doesn't have has any idea that anything's wrong with her. This idea of I always say it wrong,
Anosognosia.
Yeah, thank you. I say it wrong every time that there's a lot of blame and a lot of interpersonal disruption there. And you said that you've tried a lot of diversion techniques and they haven't worked. I first just want to say, I know it's like such a difficult process, and it sounds like you're really trying to do everything that you can to try to comfort your wife and be there for her. And so I hope you take some solace in that like you are showing up and this is a difficult process. I'm not sure all of the techniques that you're using, but it might be every single time you go that she becomes upset that she's there. Like that just might be something that consistently happens. And I wonder if just quickly changing pace, like we're talking about, and being like, I know, let's go color with the activities director. Let's go for a walk. I know that, you don't like being here, but I'm so happy I can see you today. Let's quickly go do something else. And maybe the faster that you change the pace and just stay as disengaged as possible, I'm wondering if that might help make the diversion techniques a little bit more effective. I'm not sure. Like I said, we'd have to sit down and talk for maybe half an hour to kind of go through what's happening and what's not happening, but make sure to stay safe. So if she's becoming violent, we want to make sure that, the no harm is coming to other people, whatever that may entail as well. But thank you for putting that in here. I think that it can be very difficult to help someone who isn't fully aware of how difficult that is. I'm glad that you've gotten some new ideas. I really hope that they're helpful. I would really stress just doing it as quickly as possible. If every time you go in, it becomes kind of aggressive and violent, to just do that. But thank you for that. Also, thank you for saving a couple minutes for us to kind of talk about our research study that we have going on. It is a cost-free clinic where we have about one appointment that last about 4 hours on average, where we do an intake, interview with the person who's experiencing changes, and we hope a loved one can come with or someone who knows them well, but we can also contact them via phone at a different time if needed. And we kind of do an interview that day, and then we do several hours of paper pencil testing. So there's no sort of injections, imaging, or anything, no blood draws or anything like that, just kind of back to school a little bit in that way. We need about several weeks after that appointment so that we can write a full diagnostic report, meaning that if there is something like a major neurocognitive disorder, we do work with a licensed neuropsychologist and we are able to give that diagnosis. This can be so helpful for people who are looking for just a baseline, just in case in the next 10 years they experience change. I mean, having that at your best to bring to a doctor is so incredibly useful. But it also can be something you can bring to your primary care physician if there is a change that we notice and that we find and diagnose. And we try to have that feedback appointment with the report via phone or in person, whatever your preference is. And that's kind of our study.
Yeah, fantastic. And again, I'll put the flyer in the follow-up email as well. And that is also such a great alternative for someone who either is awaiting if you call a neurologist and they say, oh, well, I'm sorry, we don't have anything for 9 months, and you want something a little bit faster, or if you don't have medical insurance and are looking for something that is, low cost, it's also a great option for those folks too.
And this is 45 plus. So our goal is really to catch as early as possible any concerns that there may be. And we do them on Saturdays. So if you are working and you need a weekend availability, we have that as well.
Fantastic. Thank y'all so much. Okay, any closing remarks? Any final thoughts?
Just thank you so much for having us. I don't know if Alex, you have anything else to add?
It was great.
Fantastic. Thank y'all so much for y'all's time and for y'all's work, doing important work and local too. Love that. Well, good deal. Well, that concludes our presentation today. I'll send the follow-up email in the next few hours. And if anybody needs anything, you know where to reach us. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.